The mainstream media's portrayal of climate change has become a contentious issue, with some arguing that it is being used as a tool to oppress Christians. While this claim may seem far-fetched, a closer examination of the media's narrative and its implications reveals a more complex and nuanced reality. Climate change, a pressing global concern, has been framed in a way that often pits Christian values and worldviews against the dominant environmental discourse. One of the primary ways in which the media uses climate change to oppress Christians is by perpetuating a narrative that equates environmentalism with secularism and Christianity with anti-environmentalism. This false dichotomy is often reinforced through the media's coverage of environmental issues, where Christian perspectives are marginalized or ignored. For instance, when Christian leaders or organizations express concerns about the economic or social impacts of environmental policies, they are often dismissed as being anti-science or climate deniers. This kind of rhetoric not only stifles constructive debate, but also creates a false narrative that Christians are inherently opposed to environmental protection. Moreover, the media's emphasis on climate change as a moral imperative can be seen as a form of cultural imperialism, where Western, secular values are imposed on Christian communities. The notion that climate change is a moral issue that requires a universal response can be problematic, as it often disregards the diverse cultural, social, and economic contexts of different Christian communities. For example, in some African countries, where Christianity is a dominant faith, environmental concerns are often secondary to more pressing issues like poverty, hunger, and access to basic healthcare. By framing climate change as a moral imperative that supersedes these local concerns, the media can be seen as imposing a Western, secular worldview on non-Western Christian communities. The media's coverage of climate change also often ignores the significant contributions that Christian organizations and individuals have made to environmental protection. Many Christian groups, such as the Evangelical Environmental Network and the Christian Reformed Church, have been actively engaged in environmental stewardship and conservation efforts for decades. However, these efforts are often overlooked or downplayed in the media, which instead focuses on the perceived anti-environmentalism of some Christian leaders or organizations. This lack of representation not only distorts the public's perception of Christian attitudes towards the environment but also perpetuates the false narrative that Christians are opposed to environmental protection. Furthermore, the media's use of climate change as a tool for social control can be seen as a form of oppression, particularly for Christian communities that are already marginalized or vulnerable. The constant bombardment of climate-related news and the emphasis on individual responsibility for reducing carbon emissions can create a sense of guilt and anxiety among Christians, particularly those who may not have the economic or social resources to adapt to the changing environmental landscape. This can lead to a form of eco-anxiety, where individuals feel overwhelmed by the scale and complexity of environmental crisis and powerless to effect change. In conclusion, the mainstream media's portrayal of climate change can be seen as a form of oppression for Christians, particularly when it perpetuates a narrative that equates environmentalism with secularism and Christianity with anti-environmentalism. The media's emphasis on climate change as a moral imperative can also be seen as a form of cultural imperialism, where Western, secular values are imposed on non-Western Christian communities. By ignoring the contributions of Christian organizations and individuals to environmental protection and perpetuating a false narrative of Christian anti-environmentalism, the media distorts the public's perception of Christian attitudes towards the environment. Ultimately, a more nuanced and inclusive approach to environmental reporting is needed, one that recognizes the diversity of Christian perspectives and experiences and promotes a more constructive and respectful dialogue between different faith communities and environmental stakeholders.